Project Ascension, Chapter 10, by Darthlink22 and The Myth. Rainbow moaned as the world slowly came into focus. She saw bricks. Bricks in the wall. She mentally cringed. She was in a cell. She knew it. As her mind instantly raced, imagining everything some pony like Bloodwing could do to her. She felt something scratching beneath her, and realized she was laying on hay. She felt a heavy weight on her neck, and 2 chains on her forelegs. She sighed, knowing better than to expect 5-star combinations.
Miss?
A small voice said.
Miss?
Her mind becoming more alert, she sat up, looking around, and her gaze immediately met another pony's. It was a colt, no older than Scootaloo in her estimation. He had a white coat that lacked a cutie mark, and a dirty blonde mane. He was looking at his new cellmate carefully, as if unsure she was friendly.
Who are you?
Rainbow asked immediately, and where am I?
I'm Lightstream,
The colt answered.
and you're at Bloodwing's place at Carolot.
Rainbow nodded. She checked herself over real quick. Other than the bruises Yellow had given her, she was still very much intact. So apparently Bloodwing hadn't had time to operate on her. Her restraints kept her connected to the wall. Apparently Bloodwing had no intention of letting her escape. Then a terrifying thought came to her. "Where's Fluttershy?" she asked in a sudden panic.
I think Black mumbled something about a pony getting away,
he answered. Rainbow breathed a sigh of relief. Good, then we won't be here long. She looked back at the colt. What are you doing here anyway? Are you another experiment? Light shook its head.
Bloodwing keeps me in here to keep my brother working.
Rainbow Dash blinked. You mean your brother is one of the agents? The colt nodded.
He's called Red now, but please don't hate him. He's a good big brother. He just doesn't want me getting hurt.
Rainbow's brain was spiraling. Until now, the agents had been an interchangeable group of obstacles standing in the way of her rescuing Scootaloo. Hearing that one had a life outside of serving Bloodwing, was a bit overwhelming. Rainbow Dash shook her head vigorously. Okay, time out. How did you and your bro end up with Bloodwing? She asked him suspiciously, still a little wary of the new pony before her. Light sighed as his ears drooped.
I guess we weren't born in the right place.
We're orphans.
We ran away and did anything for food. Mostly steal.
Light answered her hesitantly as he turned his head to the wall.
But we stole for the wrong pony. That cost us a lot. Bloodwing took me as a bargaining chip. Instead of my brother worked for him for at least 3 years, he let us go.
Rainbow blinked and lowered her head to Light's level. When was this? She asked him curiously.
Light's eyes became mostly moist. 4 years ago from now,
he answered her, with his tone becoming sadder by the moment. For a split second, Rainbow was reminded of Scootaloo in her helpless state. This colt had to suffer for so long, and her brother had to do wrong things to keep him from harm's way.
Why are you here, miss?
He asked her as he raised his eyebrow in curiosity. Rainbow huffed slightly. I'm here to get my daughter back from those creeps! She answered him with a bravado she only displayed in seemingly hopeless situations. Light's head turned slightly in confusion.
Miss, aren't...
Please, call me Rainbow Dash, or just Rainbow. Rainbow interrupted him with a smile on her face, not always being called Miss by any pony in particular.
Miss Rainbow Dash,
Light corrected him slightly, with Rainbow only rolling her eyes playfully at the colt's everlasting politeness.
I don't mean to sound too rude, but aren't you a little too young to be a mother?
Rainbow's eyes widened as blood was rushing to her cheeks at that moment.
Like how it goes, you see, Scootaloo isn't my biological daughter, but... Oh, so you adopted her!
Light interrupted her with his answer.
Yeah, you could say that.
Light smiled at the mare before him.
You must have a very kind heart to take in a pony as your daughter and get her back when she is kidnapped,
he said to Rainbow, who could not stop blushing at the coat's words.
Did I say something wrong?
No, it's just... She sighed. The only reason Scootaloo's in this mess is because of me. She told me everything that was going on, and I didn't believe her. I let Blue and Black take her. Never mind. We'll be free soon enough if Fluttershy got away. Blue was carefully making his way across Canterlot, making sure not to be seen. It was unlikely the guards would know him on sight, but there was little reason to take chances, especially considering how far south things had gone since he had arrived at Canterlot. She saw another platoon coming. He ducked into an alleyway and waved for it to pass.
Do they have any idea where they came from?
No clue. Oh, I hear Celestia had ponies doing research.
Really? I thought Sparkle would have figured things out by now.
She is going to find the filly who was kidnapped. Refuse to slow down for it.
Hope that nothing happens to her. She is pretty adorable.
Flare not lick to Captain Armor here who say that. The last pony that talked about what he wanted to do to her got KP for a year.
Too bad. That she's one.
Anyway, Captain Armor is going to interrogate her soon, which means he'll give her time some idea what to do when they storm. They trotted away. The Blue's hoof hit her head. It looked like a rescue mission was in order. Yellow was not having the best day. Being chained up and interrogated by the captain of the guards tended to do that to you.
How many agents are there? What are their powers?
Well, my power is telling you to go back here, Twilight. Shining Axe, turning to his sister. The lavatory unicorn's horn lit up, shooting a beam at their captive. Yellow felt light-headed as the magic stopped. It's my wit deafening spell. It makes it impossible to concentrate. You'll spill soon enough. Twilight boasted, Why did you want Spike? Yellow started giggling uncontrollably at this question. Celestia didn't tell you? Well, you really are a little lapdog. Did she get bored with you by any chance? She asked her, though Twilight's face reddened in anger at one of this mayor's words. Shiny trotted up to Yellow with his glaring eyes that could petrify a hydra. I suggest you answer the questions correctly, he said in a hushed, threatening whisper. Yellow just smiled playfully at him like a drunken mare. You'll just have to leave me alone. I don't want a bugger like you. She screamed as she rocked in her chair, but she stopped as she saw her head upwards with her eyes wide open. But your wife is more than welcome, especially since her husband left her to rot all alone in those caves. She answered him as she giggled further at Shining's eyes that were now widening in utmost fury. Shining's hoof rose as he scowled at the mare before him. Why, you little... Shining, don't! Twilight yelled at him as her magic encased his hoof in place. We need her to talk, and she won't if she is unconscious. Yellow whistled at Twilight. Wow, you really are smart, aren't you? Does a shame you won't know what's the deal with that made-up dragon. Twilight's ears perked up at this. What do you mean, made-up dragon? She asked Yellow. Oh, come on, Yellow exclaimed. Are you really smart, or just stupid in disguise? She asked. Look, remember that dragon hatching test you performed to get that nice little skull? She asked her. Of course I do. But Princess Celestia gave me a real egg to prove my magic. Twilight answered immediately. A snort laid down Yellow's mouth that turned into hysterical laughter. Twilight frowned at the mare's antics, and her horn glowed slightly. What's so funny? You're so gullible, it's unbelievable. You'll believe anything that old hag says to you. Wow, do I have something to tell the others when I get out of here? Look, I want answers. And I'd like you to fall over dead. The difference between us is that I'm going to live long enough to get what I want. Twilight's horn lit up and struck Yellow again. The mare groaned as her world spun once more. Where'd this Spike come from? The whelp's egg, Yellow groaned, was... At that moment, Twilight was struck from behind by a blast of ice, knocking her into a wall, holding her in place. Panicking, Shiny turned around, having just enough time to get a shield up before the beam hit him. What the... was Shiny's initial reaction. This was understandable, because the attack was coming from a member of the Royal Guard. It was less understandable as the attacker was an Earth pony. Soldier! What are you? At that point, his armor froze over, becoming brittle to the 7 temperature. The image spell that the armor came with flickered out, revealing Blue. Stoic as ever. Agent Blue, I presume? You heard of me. I'm flattered. Don't be. Nothing I heard was good. With another glow of his horn, a second shield formed around the agent, trapping him. Two at once, Blue muttered, a faint twinge of approval in his voice. And your first shield doesn't look any worse for the wear. Well, I didn't get this cutie mark for nothing, Shining Armor said proudly. Your buddy White was at least smart enough to keep moving, but you tried to stand still. Big mistake. Indeed. Blue nodded. At that point, he let loose his powers. The previous transparent shield became opaque, with frost and ice. And you made it. Shining didn't have to ask why. The sheer amount of cold his magic was exposed to hurt. It was chilling beyond belief. He'd never felt anything like it. It should have been this bad. Finally, he couldn't concentrate anymore. He dropped both shields, but shot forward, jumping slightly to the side to avoid the expected projectile of ice. Unfortunately, Blue was a tactician. Instead, he iced over the floor, seemingly by willing the ice into existence. With no traction, Shiny slid right past him, slamming against the wall. He let out a groan as the pain coursed through his body. He began to lose balance, and then he felt an even greater chill spreading over him. He saw that he was stuck against the wall in a block of ice, which he could not escape from no matter how much he tried. Before he could use his magic to thaw himself out, his horn froze over. When the ice encased his muzzle, Shining looked at Blue with absolute anger as he saw Blue walking up to him and had a look of satisfaction in his eyes. That should hold you for a while. As for you, he said as he turned to Twilight, who was filled with boiling rage at what she just saw. You're not getting away from here! She yelled as she broke away free from her icy restraints. She charged towards Blue, her horn glowing dangerously. She saw a few beams at Blue, who simply dodged them as he looked on with boredom at the mare coming towards him. She came closer to him as he summoned more ice, attempting to both ice over the floors and coat himself in his element. Like a suit of armor, Twilight was slowed. She leapt and levitated herself up, then charged her magic and shot at him with her petrification spell. Her aim was true. It hit him on the chest, and he was frozen in place. The mare grinned as she moved forward to Blue, who stood stock still in his place. That's another agent we have for questioning, she said as she turned to her brother, who strangely tried to shout at her as his pupils shrunk to the size of pins. Twilight was confused by this, and decided to move closer to her brother. I will leave you with nothing! As soon as these words were spoken, Twilight was hit with an ice ball that hit her hard against her frame, and the ice started to spread across her body as she looked down in terror at what was happening to her. Her horn was also not working, as she desperately tried to thaw herself out of this ice. She had never felt so cold in her life, and the ice continued to spread until it covered her whole body. Only her eyes and ears were left unfrozen as she could hear Yellow cackling. Twilight's body refused to move. So much for the element of magic, eh? Blue simply trotted toward Yellow and stood in front of her chair with him generating a small ice pike. The ice impacted the locks of Yellow's shackles, releasing her legs from their hold. When the fighting shackle fell to the floor, Yellow rubbed her legs with her hoof tenderly as she got up from her chair. Your lucky Bloodwing thinks you're both worth saving. Oh, don't be like that, Bluey, she cooed. Rescuing me means we get to destroy. They were cut off by a heavy blast of purple magic, which hit Blue in the back and sent him to the ground. Jumping high into the air, Yellow saw something amazing. Twilight had escaped. The ice melted around her hooves. She lit up her horn, firing another blast, but Yellow managed to dodge again. Blue looked at Twilight from the floor, showing his expression for the first time of utter shock. How? Twilight offered no answer. She simply fired once again. This time, the Earth Pony dodged. He turned to his partner. Go! Yellow shrugged. If you insist, she said as he flew out the door. Stop! Twilight yelled, turning to fire a blast at her. Blue took advantage of the distraction and used his powers to launch an ice spear at Twilight. However, at that moment, Shining Armor broke free from his icy prison, as he was motivated by both not letting his prisoner escape and by protecting his little sister. With a glow from his horn, a shield formed around her, absorbing the attack. It pained the captain of the guard, but he held his ground. Blue looked enraged. "You call out! You—" He turned to fire at Shining. Twilight tried to take the opportunity, but it was soon struck as the last attack was over. Blue turned to fire at her. He kept going back and forth, attempting to break one of the two shields. "You can't keep that up forever," Shining told White as he kept his shield up. Black. Black. The subtitle, the story meant black. Blue. "I can keep these up longer than you can keep firing." Blue suddenly stopped attacking and closed his eyes as he stood still. He started to breathe slowly, with each breath frosting as though the atmosphere started freezing. Shining raised an eyebrow at what Blue was doing, but Twilight simply shot a beam at him with the opening he gave. When the beam was about to collide with Blue, it froze the air and fell to the floor with immediate clink sound. Twilight looked on in fear at what just happened. "That's impossible!" she shouted at Blue, who opened his eyes now glowing pure white. He let out a roar as ice started shooting out from his body to every space in the room. "Be gone!" His lances of ice were being sent toward Twilight. She had to use every bit of her magic to block the oncoming ice. She was starting to get exhausted from her use of magic, as her breathing became hoarse, and her vision started to blur. Another piece of ice came toward her as she tried to block, but her magic would not work to stop it. As it came by a hair's length away from her face, she could see the twisted smile forming on Blue's face. "Now you die!" The ice particle landed on the ground, immediately melting into water. "What?" Blue shouted as his ice attacks no further effect on Twilight. Twilight's fur began to sizzle slightly, until finally she burst into flames and became a living inferno. The flames were dancing off of her, vaporizing all the ice around her and leaving scorch marks on the floor. Twilight looked up with nothing but absolute anger in her eyes to Blue, who only glared at her as he sent more ice toward her. Twilight simply melted each one of them and shot more of her magic at Blue. Blue, however, was quick at dodging them and just continued attacking Twilight. She turned to him as he decided to slide behind her and attack her from the rear. She vanished, and he looked frantically around him, trying to locate his target. He felt a nudge at his side and saw Twilight standing there, looking grimly at him. "Dodge this." Before Blue could react, he was met with an intense heat coming from Twilight's horn as it shot a beam of magic to him. He let out a sharp cry as he felt the intense heat of Twilight's magic. It was the power of the sun itself. He flew backward to the wall. He got up slowly and started huffing at the mare before him, who was no longer burning. "So, even your magic is amplified by rage," he remarked to Twilight, who slumped to the ground as her magic was near depletion. Blue started to walk toward her, but stopped when his hoofs shattered like ice itself. He looked down in horror as the rest of his body was turning to ice, and started to break with even the slightest of movements he performed. Twilight and Shining looked down at him with both wonder, and disgust, and fear at what was happening to his body. Blue tried to call out to him, "No, please." But his head, along with his body, was now ice itself. It tilted, and with it, crashed to the floor, shattering to a million pieces. Twilight looked, carefully nudging the ice on the floor with her hoof. "Looks like he overextended his energy," she noted. "Just like White. It was too much for him. That's one less to worry about." Shining nodded. "We need to catch up with Yellow. She's our last lead in dealing with the rest of Bloodwing's agents." Much to Shining's surprise, Twilight slumped to the floor. "You better go on without me. I'm tired. I used too much mana. I'd be no good to you right now." Shining nodded. "Don't worry. I think my soldiers must have gotten her by now. She's in a palace filled with guards, and she's not exactly the master of subtlety." Shining Armor's statement was half correct. Yellow was not a stealth expert, but that was because she didn't need to be. At her highest speed, she went far too fast for any of the guards to catch up to her. An ever-growing squadron was chasing her down the halls, always just a step behind her. Yellow's excellent banking was not helping, was let her turn corners tightly, while leaving her pursuers tripping over themselves. "Come on, boys. You can do better than that."
"Stop this! Even if we can't catch you, the princess is alert to your presence! They will be here soon!"
Yellow didn't show it, but that made her nervous. Still, she couldn't leave yet. She had to compensate her loss to be in Bloodwing's good races again, and she had the perfect idea. She turned another corner and picked up speed. Again and again she banked and turned, until finally she came to the wing of the castle she had been looking for. The guest wing. She burst into the first room and found it empty. Not slowing down, she flew straight through the window, which, luckily for her, had been made out of safety glass and didn't cut to ribbons. She banked around and flew into the room next to it. The guards who followed her out were lost for a moment, expecting to find her flying away. But Yellow knew it wouldn't be for much longer. They noticed the second broken window soon, and she had to act fast. She flew back into the hallways, opening each door and looking inside. The first three she found empty, but in the fourth, she found what she was looking for. A small baby dragon was looking at her with wide, terrified eyes, as were an earth pony and a unicorn foal. Their playing cards had been forgotten upon hearing the ruckus in the hallway, and at this point, it was clear their game would never be finished. Perfect! She said sultry as he approached the three youths, Sweet Belle and Apple Bloom standing behind Spike as he held his arms wide and acted as a shield for his fillies. Smoke came out of his nose as he glared at the threat before him. "What are you doing here?" he demanded to know, as Yellow came to a stop before him. Yellow chuckled wickedly as he saw the little whelp in defense before her. "I just let myself out, as my partner was dealing with the element of magic. Can't say she will be looking pretty from now on, though," she remarked, as she looked on with pleasure at Spike's growing anger. "If you hurt my mom, you're gonna—" "Oh, shut up!" In a flash, she flew up to Spike and gave him a swift swipe with her hoof, hitting him in the side of the head and sending him into the door. Apple Bloom and Sweet Belle squealed in terror as they ran to hide under the bed. But she rolled just under her eyes as she saw them. "Tell the others this. If they follow me, they're dead," she said blankly as she scooped up the stunned dragon and flew out the window just as the royal guards reached the room. When they arrived, they were met with the crying of two fillies by their feet. They were shouting at the same time, with tears of fear rolling down their eyes and panic etched into their faces. The guards tried to calm them down as best as they could, but with no success at all. "What tarnation's going on here?" Applejack came pushing from behind the guards, and Apple Bloom immediately ran to her, Applejack instinctively scooping her up and tending to her frightened little sister. She was surprised by this, since Apple Bloom was always a difficult one to scare, even on Nightmare Night. Rarity was right behind her, with Sweet Belle whimpering in her sister's embrace as Rarity nuzzled her little sister to calm her down. Both Applejack and Rarity looked at each other with worried eyes, and frowned slightly before they turned their attention to their little sisters. "What happened? Are you two all right?" Sweetie shivered for a moment before looking up at her older sister. Yellow was here." "Oh my goodness! Are you all right? She didn't hurt you, did she? I swear she did. Oh, we're fine," Apple Bloom said. "But Spike ain't. That Yale took him." Both Rarity and Applejack tensed at the news. The guards exchanged worried murmurs. There was an uneasy shifting. Some pony was going to tell the most powerful unicorn in existence that her son was just kidnapped, and it was not going to be pleasant. Red triple-checked to make sure Bloodwing and Black weren't still around. Then he took the key and unlocked the cell door. Light and Rainbow both looked down with wide eyes. "Bro, you came! What's going on?" This is going long enough," Pegasus said, walking over to his brother. He started to undo his bonds. "Bloodwing's close to winning. Unfortunately, every pony except him and Black are out. This will be our only chance to escape." "Hold on," Rainbow said. "After all that, you're just turning around and running now? Where was this attitude before?" "Bloodwing had my bro captive. Luckily, he's so near to victory he's gotten sloppy," he said as he unlocked his brother's final lock. Light then wrapped his forelegs around his brother's neck in a hug. Red simply smiled as he patted his little brother's back. After the hug, he moved over to Rainbow Dash and repeated the process. "We need to take this opportunity." "We're getting Scootaloo too," Rainbow Dash said, as if she were stating a completely objective fact. "We might not have time." "I'm not leaving without her," Rainbow Dash snapped. "You two can go if you want, but I'm not leaving without my daughter." There was a moment of silence before Red sighed. "Why do I always get stuck with the icky jobs?" he asked himself before looking at Rainbow Dash, who looked sternly at him. "I guess I owe you that much." "You owe me much more," she said bluntly, "but rescuing Scootaloo will be a good start." As Red unbound Bond, he nodded. We'll better get going then, before the others realize something's wrong.